Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. It is your council recap with your city administrator, Chad Brecklin. We just had a council meeting on March 11th. Had to look at the date. And a lot to get to, so we're going to jump right into it. Normally, we don't talk about the consent agenda. However, an item was pulled out of the consent agenda, and just want to make sure folks understand. First off, what is the consent agenda for folks not familiar with it? And then we'll look at that item number 4.
Yeah. The consent agenda is basically a grouping of items that can all be voted on at one given time. So they all could be moved. In this case, typically they're moved to the committees or commissions they're being referred to as either a resolution or ordinance or other matter. Alders do have the ability to remove items from the consent agenda if they want to talk about them, maybe refer them to a different committee or commission than has been already listed. And last night, one of the items that was the only item that was removed from the consent agenda was the proposed ordinance relating to a municipal vehicle registration fee that has been proposed for council consideration. That item was to be referred out, obviously, with the next council meeting being April 8th. Was referred out at this point in time to give folks notice that this was going to be discussed, and an opportunity to assess that fee, and if they want to make any comments, they can do so. City has placed some information on its website in regards to the municipal vehicle registration fee, and I would encourage anyone with questions about it to take a look at that site, and if their questions aren't answered, they can feel free to reach out to me with any other additional questions they may have.
Yeah, and then coming up on the April 8th meeting, there will be, at every council meeting, there's public hearing on the agenda itself.
Public comment.
Public comment, sorry, not public hearing. I'm saying what you were saying. Let me say that right. Thank you. Nevertheless, so public can comment on any of these things, including this proposed.
Exactly. And one of the conversation items last night is whether or not there'll be a formal public hearing for this. But regardless, whether it's a formal public hearing or not, members of the public are always able to come and comment on both agenda or non-agenda items at any common council meeting. And I would encourage anybody who wishes to come and speak in regards to this proposed municipal vehicle registration fee that they appear at the April 8th common council meeting at 7:30 and share their comments.
A lot of moving parts on this one. See, I wanted to say public hearing because that's what they talked about, public comment. Yes. Thank you, Chad.
And it may ultimately be agended as a public hearing, just to call it out more specifically.
All right, perfect. We will communicate that if once we know if that will change or not. But nevertheless, April 8th. And I will remind you at the end of this interview that the next council meeting is taking a break because of spring break. But we'll get to that. We jump down into our regular agenda items and start with Public Works. Just one resolution here on approving park vehicle, vehicles, I should say.
Yeah, there were 2 vehicles in the Parks Department that need replacement. One is, I think, just over 20 years old. The other's nearly 15 years old. And there are 2 trucks that are being ordered, one an electric truck to replace one of the smaller trucks, and then a truck that is capable of plow operations. So that was approved by the Common Council.
That one truck's been here as long as I've been here. Long as you've been here too, buddy.
As
20 years. That's pretty good. Yeah. All right, sorry. Moving on. We have a Park Commission one here amending the general fund here, budget amendments.
Yeah, there's. I think we had a couple of these last council meeting. We're cleaning up, so to speak, or tidying up the 2024 general fund budget. And in this particular case, the Parks Department needed a budget amendment in order to true up some things within their budget. So that was approved by the council as well.
Next resolution has to do with approval of the Fitchburg Sustainability Plan. Was a discussion only? Will be action may take place on April 8th.
Yeah, absolutely. So our sustainability specialist, Phil Groupie, and a representative from Pale Blue Dot were present to answer any questions and give another overview of the sustainability plan for our Common Council last evening. Anyone with feedback is able to reach out to sustainability specialist Phil Groupie and share their feedback in advance of March 18th. And it is anticipated that the Common Council will take action on this plan for adoption on April 8th.
All right, moving on to an approval of a contract between the City of Fitchburg and Sustain Dane for the implementation of Phase 2 projects with our Efficiency Housing Advisory Committee. That's a lot to say there, but it's a pretty awesome program.
Yeah, it is a really great program that the city is partnering with. We're utilizing funding from our Affordable Housing Fund, which was created through successful tax increment districts. This is not property tax levy money that's being utilized for this program. And what this program does is it allows for energy efficiency improvements at smaller rental properties. Typically, we're looking at buildings that maybe have 4 to 8 to 12 units, generally speaking. And this action last night was kind of the first round of project approvals that will be utilized with this to improve the energy efficiency of these buildings with this funding.
It's cool. We got to follow them last year, and I encourage you to check it out if you haven't on our website. It's interesting what you can find as you go through it and making some small changes, making those things more affordable. It's pretty special program.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, turning our attention to resolution ratifying the 2025-2027 collective bargaining agreement with the police department union.
Yeah, so the city has been in negotiations with our police department union since last fall on a successor contract. This contract would cover the years 2025 through 2027, and the contract was ratified by the police union a couple of weeks ago, or about a month or so ago, and our Common Council approved the contract last evening, so it will now go into effect.
Is that typical? I mean, I guess pulling the curtain back just a tiny bit. Can't pull too much back here, but you do this contract every so often, every couple of years. How does that work out?
So typically there have been, the contracts have been 3 years in length. That is always subject to negotiation on how long the contract actually, or how many years the contract will cover. But ultimately through the negotiations, everyone was comfortable keeping it as a 3-year contract.
All right. Turn your attention, direct referral here on amending the 2025 budget for various fund and carryovers. An annual tradition.
Yes, an annual tradition of sorts. You are correct. So this basically takes money that was budgeted largely for projects in 2024, and then we do a resolution to the Common Council requesting to carry over that funding that was authorized in 2024 into 2025 so that any of those projects that weren't begun or weren't completed can have that funding transferred into this year's budget to keep those projects moving forward, or other things like replacements and of vehicles and those sorts of things.
All right, turning our attention to a resolution for authorizing legal services in the defense of Hy-Vee in an excessive tax assessment lawsuit.
Yes, so Hy-Vee has filed an excessive tax assessment lawsuit against the city, and this resolution simply authorizes the city staff to go out and hire legal services and any associated experts that might be needed in order to defend this particular case.
Moving on to resolution directing staff to negotiate a deferred loan for Uptown Hills Workforce Housing Development.
So this is a project that is on Haight Farm Road, just off of the roundabout with Lacey Road, and this would bring 24 townhouse units to the city with a workforce housing component to those. I think 5 of the units would be at 30% of the area median income, 10 of the units would be at 50% of the area median income, and the remaining units, which I believe would be 9, would be at 80% of the area median income. And the developer who's bringing this project forward has sought funding from a number of different tax credit related sources. Obviously, projects of this nature are challenging to put together in order to make them a workforce housing development, which means the rents are limited to certain thresholds. And after seeking all of the appropriate funding sources for this particular project, the developer still had a small gap that was needed in order to make this project financially viable. And that gap was identified through work with our public finance advisors to be about $330,000. And what the city has offered to do in order to make this project a reality, which would help us with one of our goals in the 2019 housing plan to bring more workforce housing to the city, in particular workforce townhome type housing to the city. Ultimately, we have offered to provide a deferred loan to this developer for $330,000. This resolution directs staff to go ahead and work out the particulars associated with this loan agreement. Ultimately, that loan agreement will come back to the Common Council for approval. And I do want to mention that the funding for this particular project is also not using property tax levy. It is using the Affordable Housing Fund dollars that, again, were created through the closure of tax increment districts in parts of the city over the last several years.
Yeah, and there, as I encourage every time, you can go back and watch these council meetings. Full breakdown of this item. This item was actually moved up in the agenda, so if you're going back to watch, make sure you know that. But you can go back and see any of the things that Chad just talked about here through our website, fitchburgwi.gov. Click on Fact TV and our Gov channel. Next committee of the whole meeting is March 19th, and as mentioned, we don't have another meeting in March here because of spring break. We're taking off, but we're coming back in April 8th, with a regular meeting there. So
yeah, the meeting was canceled for March 25th due to a lack of quorum, so the availability of alders was a bit limited.
I said spring break, you said lack of quorum. Whatever.
Yeah.
Same difference. No, it's good.
Maybe they're one and the same.
They are. Yeah, somehow they coexist. I don't know why, but they do. All right, Chad, appreciate your time as always, and we'll check back with you in the next one.
Thanks, Jeremy.